Happy Thursday, gentlemen. I'm just getting to Slack messages there. Did I break all your CI test?
Yeah, we are working through this one by one.
Sorry for breaking everything. I feel like this week and maybe the next meeting, I'll break a whole lot more stuff.
Yeah, folks are not complaining yet, so it's not all doom and gloom.
Better than bad. Slowly getting ourselves to a point where all the registries agree on things. Well, we're far enough along here. Hey, Jory joined us.
Hello, darlings.
How's it going, Jory?
Oh, so good. I'm having some soup.
Alrighty. Enjoy that soup.
I will.
Um, though while I have you here, before you get too comfy, next week, I think you've already taken that off the calendar, but the week after that is New Year's Day, and I think we'll probably skip that one as well.
Wait, no. I thought I'd taken both of those off, but I missed it. I will do that now.
Okay, thanks. Alrighty. So I think Tianan and Jeff have been back and forth in various states on the conformance test. And I hope that maybe some of this today will sort out whatever we're working on over there. So I share the right window? I believe I did. So first one I threw on the agenda was we don't have an upload cancel API inside of a distribution spec. We used to. The distribution project has it in their side, but it was one of those things that when we got rid of the detail.md, we lost that. So over in 1.1, we had the detail.md file, and you could delete an ongoing upload, and that would cancel the upload in progress, release resources on the registry server if that was being allocated. And, it eventually times out, but it's kind of a nice to do if you can. And from a client side, if the registry throws any error at me, I just ignore it. Like I did a best effort over there. I tried to be nice to the registry. If they don't like it, it's no big deal. But I'm wondering, should we standardize this? Because I threw it in the conformance test, and I think Jeff was looking at that saying, hey, cheater, can't throw something there that's not in the spec. To sum that up right, Jeff?
I think basically, yeah.
So
You're
yeah,
asking for invalid things. It's not fair.
I'm a cheater like that. I will say when I did it that I went over into the config and I added an entry into the config that this is not the best way to view this file. I should go view it over in my branch. Let's do that. Can I click over here and pull it up? Hot diggity, I can. So I've put a config over here that'll let you disable that test. So at the very least, it is not required that that API is there and whatnot. So on the blob, there is a upload cancel, or you can just say OCI API upload cancel is false and it won't test that. I can always change the default there as well. So we aren't even testing that by default. We could add to the spec. We could add to the spec and say this is a 1.2 feature. And then everybody is testing against a 1.1 registry wouldn't have it. But I want to throw it out there that, we lost something in the process there, and do we want to be testing for it? And I am resurrecting 3-year-old GitHub issues to do this, but I was convinced it was there. I started implementing it, and then I looked back and I was like, wait a minute, it's not in the spec. And then Jeff looked at it. It's like, wait a minute, you did something that's not in the spec. And Rob, if it makes you feel better, Zop passed that one just fine.
Is that good news or bad news? I don't know.
I think it means you implement a distribution, I implement a distribution, and then this just got lost out of the distribution spec. Distribution implemented this. I feel like we all implemented it. Well, I say that, but if Jeff is complaining, I'm pretty sure that means Jeff didn't implement it.
I mean, I did now. It just was missing since it wasn't technically in spec anymore.
So what direction would you like to see us go with this, Jeff? I threw out a couple different paths there.
I think in conversations I've had with Tianan on the side as well, I think it would make sense to put it back in, but it also sounds like there's a much broader question of what other things I removed that need to be brought back in as well. I know that conversation was brought up, but it seems as though it was killed off or stalled out or something. Yeah, that one. So it'd be interesting to revive that, but at the very least, let's bring back the missing endpoint.
And in the details, it doesn't really say much of, here are the different methods we defined. We don't have any of the should, must, may language on any of this.
And we deleted a bunch of content from spec.md during that purge too, right?
I would have to go look.
I remember a lot of content disappearing from spec.md.
And yeah, I agree. We need to go through and get a bunch of that, whatever we're missing, get it back in there. This was one of those things I came across and was like, ooh, that should be in there. Given that from me as a client, if I call this and the registry gives me back any error, any non-standard code, I just ignore it. I'm just doing the best effort as a client to be polite. Do we want to make this a may? Just say registries may be able to implement this and then leave this as a non-default tested API. In other words, go over to my conformance here and change the upload cancel default from true to false. So anybody that does have it can enable it if they want to, just to say, hey, we implemented this. But it's not something that clients should really care too much about. And if a registry doesn't implement it, we don't care.
I mean, it's basically around cleanup on the registry side, right? I mean, the client doesn't really care that much. It's kind of a nicety that the registry knows it can remove stuff after some time or whatever, or be told to delete things. So maybe make it a may or a should. It's probably not necessarily a must.
So I was leaning toward may. You're between may and a should. Any other thoughts? Because if it's a should, I kind of want to put it in the test here and leave it as a default true. If it's a may, I'll leave it default false.
I guess my only preference for should is I feel like mays kind of get ignored a lot of times, and then clients probably get in the habit of not bothering kind of a thing because it may not be widely supported. Whereas shoulds maybe are, hey, I should at least try.
I mean, looking back at the definition here, I'm canceling upload in progress to release some resources on the server, and it's even specified over here. If it's not called, don't worry, the registry's going to do it for you anyway.
I put the deleted spec language in the Zoom chat with a link.
Ooh, thank you. So client should request. Doesn't say registries should implement.
Yeah, it's written more like client documentation than it is like registry spec language,
Mm-hmm.
which is, not uncommon here. So I'm not a distribution spec maintainer, but I would be inclined to say this is a should, especially because for registries that don't want to implement anything special here, like they can just return an error and call it a day.
They can return a success and call it a day.
Yeah, they can just say, yeah, sure, I deleted that session. It's gone. If they don't care, like, yeah, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It's best effort anyways. The
Yep.
only weird case is if the client then tries to continue that session with the same session ID. And there would probably be an expectation that that errors in some way or starts a new session. But,
We were getting far enough into undefined behavior. I didn't want to test that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And those session IDs, those are provided by the server, aren't they?
The way we're doing it in the spec and the way it's actually implemented are kind of two different things. The spec language is trying to be specific of saying, hey, you're going to put an ID here. The language of the implementations is whatever location field you get from the registry, you take it. It can be sending you off somewhere completely differently if it wants to. But I don't think we have a good way in the spec to say whatever that crazy location field is.
Yeah, but I guess my point was this session ID is not directly user supplied, like the client doesn't generate a session ID and pass it to the server.
Nope, it's all server generated with the location header.
All server generated, so it would be arguably invalid behavior for a client to say delete this session ID and then reuse it because it's not a client controlled value. That's the server's session ID.
And at that point, when you've done the delete, your next location header would have come from that delete response, which it won't have one. And so you should be out of a path to follow at that point. Doesn't mean clients won't try, but yeah, I think we're into undefined behavior at that point.
Yeah.
I just like the idea of us testing this so that if a server wants to free up resources, and so many servers have already implemented this from historical reasons, that I think it's nice to have. So, all right, I will add it in there. And now the question is, if I make it a should, that's fine enough with me. Should I make this a 1.2 feature or like a 1.1 plus dev or something like that? Since it's not technically in the 1.1 spec.
It's
If
in the
we're opening
pre
up one,
1.0.
What were you saying, Jeff?
I mean, if we're able to put in 1.2 stuff, I have things to put in for 1.2.
I figure put them in as we merge them into the spec. And so if we merge in the upload delete, the canceling the upload, that feels like a good time to throw it in the conformance over here as well. Similar for manifest digest algorithms and that sort of stuff. But if you got more, let's start making a list.
So, Brandon, I have a question. Are we also testing the conformance from the client's perspective? So we have a registry that is supposed to be this golden standard, right? And then we have all these clients talking to that, and are the clients breaking? So we should not be, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is we should not be in a situation where the sentiment in the community is, hey, these OCI folks are forcing us to do things where while everything else, everything is working as it is. So why are they forcing breakages, right? So that is the question.
I volunteered to do the server test. Someone else can do the client stuff. That was my quote way back.
Okay.
There was someone that said they wanted to volunteer. I have no idea if they've done anything. And then we've gone back and forth, folks who want to make other changes in between. But yeah, all of my stuff is server side, client side from this thread. I can throw this in the chat if you want to pull this up. My big concern in here was that if we try to write from the client side, like a client side conformance test, I honestly don't know how to do it because there are a lot of clients out there. And so I thought I explained that here somewhere.
Yeah, this is like the validation we tried to write for the runtime spec, where it's really hard to write conformance tests for something where the behavior is like instrumenting a different system.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I put it in here, if there was another PR somewhere else. But my concern on the client side is very much same kind of problem that runtime is probably going to have is that you can have a lot of different clients doing a lot of very different things. And how am I going to write a client conformance test for a vulnerability scanner? It's not pushing images. It's not calling a whole bunch of
Yeah.
APIs. It's just pulling a couple of blobs and coming back with a pass fail. How do you know if it even did it right from a conformance test versus them running their own test?
Yeah, at that point you'd be writing conformance tests for a harness, and you'd be testing the conformance of the harness, not of the client.
Yeah. There are so many kinds of clients. They're all called different ways. They're all implemented different ways. We wouldn't have a way to call the client to tell the client to do something easily. They would have to run the client against it. And it gets very complicated. I've seen people suggest that, hey, we should just make a OCI specific server that implements the APIs exactly how you want to, instrument all those APIs and report back were these APIs called the way we thought they should be called. That doesn't tell us whether or not the client was supposed to have called all those APIs or if it called all the APIs it thought it was going to call. So That's my concern. I'm not sure if you had other thoughts on there, Rom, but yeah, when I looked through this, and it might not have been on this issue, I think we've chatted about it a couple times. That was my big thing, is that we've got a lot of different tools out there. You've got Argo and other kinds of things storing artifacts inside of OCI. You've got runtimes. You've got generic tools like Oris and Reg Client and Crane and other stuff that would be probably on the easier side to test those, because they're calling all the APIs just as almost like a pass-through. But then you've got a lot of other tools that are more specialized for doing one specific thing against a registry.
Yeah, I mean the end goal is this, right? It's since it is a standard, so if the whole point of standardizing the server side is then from the client's point of view, the server implementation itself is irrelevant because it's a standard. And if you standardize the client, then from the server point of view, the client itself doesn't matter because any client will work with it. So I think that's the argument here. But I see the point and the difficulty. Unless OCI says, "Hey, here is a registry that is the gold standard. Make sure it works with it somehow."
Even if we said, here's the gold standard registry, how do we know that you've got all the right content on that registry that it's testing against? Maybe they want to have some non-distributable foreign Microsoft layers. Maybe they want to have some pre-populated Helm charts or some other artifact on the registry. Now you got to pre-populate it, but their tool isn't doing the population. Their tool is just consuming. Are we going to test the population and the consumption together in one test? Two tools? Anyway, that's what I got there. If someone wants to write that, go for it. I just only volunteered to do the server side. All right, so it should maybe a future spec version just because it's not in the current spec, but I'll leave it to true in the future versions of the spec. Does that sound like a happy medium for folks on the canceling API?
Yeah, I think sounds reasonable. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, let's see. There was another one over here that I wanted to chat about. Optional, all that good stuff. This is the blob chunk out of order on the last put. That's a mouthful. But the short of it is we can do patch request. Patch request can go out of order. And if you do that, you're supposed to get back this 416 response code from the patch. Just says, hey, you're out of order. You did it wrong. Send your data in order. And we've got the process to do a get request. You figure out where you were, and then you resume your chunked upload. The last chunk can contain data. And that's where things get a little bit more convoluted. If that last chunk contains data and you try to send that last chunk out of order, what should the response be? And the challenge is that the spec doesn't say that that last put request does anything in there. So like the patch request, we specify somewhere down here the 416. I forget where in here. I'm always looking around for that one. The range, the content range. Is it 416? There it is. So if it's out of order, you get that. And the get request can put you back in order. But the put request doesn't have the language in there. And we also don't have it on the endpoint of that put request. So when we go down and look at the endpoints, we've got the patch for the blob on an upload, and then we got the put with the digest. So we've got a 416 on the patch, but we don't have a 416 over here on the put.
I
And
spent a lot of time arguing with Jeff about this privately. A lot of time going back and forth. I think the thing that we agreed on was that it's actually cursed that the put accepts content at all. The put should be an empty request that is just closing the upload.
so you say that, but you can also do a post put, a monolithic upload, and the put contains the entire blob.
That's cursed too.
Sure, and I think that that is reasonable though, right? If it contains the entire blob, then there's no chunking at all, and there's no out of order problem. No 416 to tell you that you screwed up the ordering or that a packet was lost.
I get it.
So Tianan also brought up the question in our conversations in terms of it's probably really important to understand how clients handle this. Um, because it could be that clients interpret a or what was it? Yeah, a 400 on the put as a basically abandon all hope and start over. Whereas clients may not know how to interpret or handle retries of a 416 on a put like they would a patch. It's very likely they have different retry logic on the patch implementation versus the put. So I think we ultimately decided, or in our conversation of like, while yes, I think technically speaking, a 400 is correct, and so is a 416. That's also correct. Like all of these things are probably valid, but it might come down to more how clients tend to implement it.
Yeah, the problem is that put closes the upload. And if you receive a 416 on a put, it's now ambiguous whether the upload is closed or whether you can put again or patch again. Whereas with a 400, it's not ambiguous whether the upload is closed. The upload is closed. It's time to try again. So that's actually the only way that I can make sense of the response of distribution returning a 400 is that it's the only way to unambiguously say the upload is closed and you need to start completely over because you missed a chunk.
So you say that, but if I do a GET request, it says my range is now 0 to 2042.
No. No.
And that was the response to me doing a put request of 2048 to 3066.
And you got a 400 on the put and the
Yes,
upload is still open. That's insane.
with
Yeah,
a bad range.
that's a pathologic behavior that should be fixed.
So yeah, when I looked at this, I was trying to sort out what was happening. I can understand exactly what they did. They just completely ignore the range on the put, compute the digest is wrong, and then they just come back and say your digest is wrong, but here's your current progress.
And my argument for 416 being correct is probably the same one you're making, that the client gave you information about which section of the blob this is, and you can't receive that section of the blob, so you can't possibly validate a digest. It's not valid to concatenate that data onto the existing blob because you
Yeah.
know which section of the blob you've just received.
Yep.
But it's then ambiguous what to do next.
We are good there. That should have come back with an invalid something. This is just,
Where the patch has explicit language about if you receive a 416, it will tell you where to start over again. And then you just keep sending patches again from wherever the registry told you, hey, wait a minute. I need you to back up and start here.
So it actually doesn't. If you do a patch and I go out of order there, it'll come back and say 416, you haven't sent me any data yet. You have to do a GET request, and that's going to give you the range at that point.
The 416 doesn't include the range?
It doesn't, and there's also no location. And if you try to use the location when you did the invalid, some registries that doesn't work on it. So you have to do a GET request to get a new location to start to resume.
I must have misread the spec.
One advantage of us coming out with the solution and the answer to this right now is that not a lot of people do chunked uploads. A lot of people do streaming uploads, but not a lot of people do chunked uploads.
So we can decide how this is supposed to work, or we can just get rid of this. What are you trying to say, Brandon?
We can put some verbiage in the spec and not worry about breaking a lot of implementations out there because there's just not a lot of implementations to break. So if we want to say the put request needs a 416 support on it, we can do that. And the concern about us breaking clients out there, I don't think it's a big concern. On the flip side, I can pull up SOT and show you what it looks like when we do that one. Which, like I say, I could pull up mine as well, but SOT on the out of order chunked works just fine. It comes back up at that point when we do the put request. Put out of order comes back with a response of, well, that was a 400, but I was able to get at that point, and then I was able to recover it. So should the 400 be valid? It was something invalid in there, but then I was able to recover it and then resume from there. Yeah. Why the 416 didn't return a range? I wish we did. I wish it also returned a location. Because your previous location is no longer, if you did an out of order upload, you probably don't have the proper location header from wherever the server thinks because you two have apparently gotten out of sync. And so you need not just the 416, but you need a location header and the range. When I think of doing chunked uploads though, as much as you might not like putting data in that final put, it's kind of nice from a client standpoint to eliminate one extra round trip.
But you've already decided to do chunked upload, which is like insane number of round trips. That's
a
the
fair
upload
criticism.
mode that you chose is outrageous round trips.
That's
So
a fair
like
criticism.
to save one is pathological.
I'll own that one.
If your goal is to save round trips, you're doing a monolithic upload every time, even if it's a 700 gigabyte blob.
I feel like that's what most people do.
If your goal is to minimize round trips, that's the only sane option, right? Because it's one round trip. It's just a really big trip.
I just put it all in the post. And then I wait for the registry to come back after the 700 makes this done to say, yeah, I don't accept data in the post. Send me a put request with that same data.
Perfect.
There are days I look at the spec and I can agree that we designed this by committee. We couldn't come up with just one blob upload API. We had to come up with 4. 3 of which are actually in the spec today.
Yeah, Ram, to your point, like I think when you're doing uploads in general, round trips is really a lot less relevant. When we're downloading tiny JSON blobs, round trips have a much higher cost than they do when you're uploading large chunks of a binary blob of data.
Yeah.
Which coincidentally was the subject of another conversation for a 1.2 was what does it look like to update the spec to minimize round trips?
Are we just talking the S3 stuff or are we going into other territory?
This was other territory.
Go on. I'm intrigued.
I mean it's a lot of reviving and pushing the auth spec along. So I'm saving that for a New Year's resolution 2026. Bring back the auth spec.
That is one of the groups that we haven't killed yet, and I'm determined to get that finished at some point. So happy to hear it. Speaking of all that in the auth side, one of the things that is really painfully slow in this is that I don't reuse auth tokens between any of my requests. Every patch request, every put, all those things, they're all requesting a new auth token every time I do one of those requests and responses to the server. And we probably should cache, but how much do you cache is a question. Nobody wants to dig into that, huh? Part of the challenge is once you start caching this, when you go from one request to another, cross repository blob mount, something like that, or if you do a get and then you do a put afterwards, suddenly that previous token that you cached is no longer valid, and now you're getting into reauth challenges. And do we need to solve that in the conformance test? Is that something that we need to specify so that we're doing it according to some kind of auth specification, or an unknown territory there?
And like auth includes scopes that you can use to determine that answer, but it's not specified. There's no official spec for auth yet.
Not yet. And the scopes can change between requests. And if you try to parse the scope from the client side, it's not necessarily, the server can do different stuff with the scope if it wanted to.
Yeah, good times.
I was reminded of that when I realized that servers can give me a delete on a scope. And I'm like, where was that specified?
I feel
Nobody
the,
wants to say we're.
I,
Go ahead,
I
Chuck.
I feel the need to call out that we actually have an ongoing issue where reg client is requesting delete.
And am I breaking everything again?
You're breaking, well, I wouldn't say breaking. You're making
And
yourself known.
it's always fun when I get on the Docker Hub reports. It makes me wonder if someone's trying to delete stuff that they don't have access to or something, or if I'm just asking for it when I don't need it.
Yeah, you're asking for delete when you don't need it, and that's triggering a lot of, hey, why is this person requesting a lot of stuff they don't need?
Interesting. I can look on my side too and see what's going on there. It's entirely possible that someone's going out there trying to actually delete stuff too. So I've seen people do funny things. Yeah. Chunked uploads is one of those things that we just don't have a lot of support for out there. All right, those were my two big issues. I will run with those as best I can. We didn't really answer this. Do we want to add 416 on the put request or not?
I think
It's like,
letting the registry reply with a 416 is valid, right?
I think now letting a registry and requiring the registry to give a 416 are two different things.
Yeah.
If we require the registry to give me a 416, that means I can put in the conformance test.
Yeah, that final put is both a patch and a put for closing. So if you're arguing for the patch, then 416 makes sense. At least that tightens the language.
Yeah, we've already got it in the patch today. Where on earth did that tab go? So on the patch request today, when you're doing that, you've already got the 416 there for that part of it.
Yeah, it's overload. The final put is overloaded. So at least my call would be to return a 416 you are there given the circumstances.
Honestly, reading this, since the final chunk may be uploaded with a patch or it can be uploaded with a put, and this is if a chunk is uploaded out of order, the registry must respond with a 416. The way you're phrasing it, Rom, is you're putting a chunk inside the put. So the 416 should not only be possible, it should be a must.
Yeah, you could read those as applying to the put already, huh?
Yeah, it's not that it's yeah it's unfortunate, uh, gi- but given that put is taking up some of the patch functionality, I think it makes sense to align with it when it's applicable.
It's the reason I put a test in for it. I'll go ahead and make it a must and make it more clear that put can have a 416 in the error codes down below and make sure it's clear on this section that regardless of how you send that chunk, put or patch, that it's 416 for all those different scenarios.
I will immediately file a 1.2 ticket that says puts must not have a chunk.
And then we'll see where we go from there.
That way we don't have any undefined behavior, and we don't that really cuts down on our corner cases for the client. Makes things a lot easier for everyone.
I mean, the fewer these APIs, the better, in my opinion. The fact that we've got the monolithic that you can send the blob inside of the post, but its registries may support this, which honestly means I probably need to change my behavior in the conformance test to move that out of a default true. However, registries that don't support the 202 on that one, and I do support that. So we're good at that point. We can leave it on. All right. Think we resolved all those. The only other administrative I threw on the list was next 2 weeks we are off, so enjoy some free time with the family, all that good stuff. Anything else you folks want to chat about today? Jeff, did I break enough stuff for you in the past couple weeks that you don't want to deal with me anymore?
No, I'm good. I'm struggling with other things lately, but I do want to come back and circle around the auth stuff next year. So look for conversations around that.
Awesome. Anything I can do to get myself off the reports, I'm looking to do. All right. Any other requests before we're going? Dinon, what you got?
I'm going to add that I've been playing with your conformance tests, and I have enjoyed the experience. They are, in Jeff's words, quite addicting.
I wasn't trying to gamify conformance test and turn it into some kind of ad tech scenario there, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, it worked. I ran them against a registry, and like it was exciting to try and find where in the code in the registry to change it to make it pass your tests. It was fun.
As I'm doing this, I'm currently getting ready to throw in the sparse manifest support for people that want to push an index that don't have all the platforms, and for folks that want to maybe even push an image that doesn't have all the layers for some bizarre reason. And yeah, I'm updating OLED so I have something to test against because I know nobody's going to support that out of the box. So not just your own registries have to be rewritten to pass all these tests. Mine too. All right. That's what I got. Mike, everything going all right down there?
Yep, we're good.
I'm just happy to see Container D is one day going to think about supporting the chunked request.
It's a to-do. It's only 8 years old.
One of many, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, just push it again. Seems to be the way we're doing it. Yep.
I just give up and throw it back to the user, and the user has to push it again.
There you go. Well, we have do with retries, so.
There you go.
All right. Take care, man.
Awesome. Well, nothing else. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy New Year. Have a great one. We'll be back here on January the 8th. Got a couple weeks off. So take care.
Cheers.
Thanks all. Happy holidays.